One day, the Indian master Saraha was in a flower garden, holding a skull cup filled with nectar. Glancing into the cup, he saw that all the flowers, mountains, and trees were reflected in the nectar. Simply observing this phenomenon awakened his great realizations developed over many past lifetimes, and he spontaneously realized Mahamudra. He saw that all manifestations exist as a reflection of the mind, just as the trees and so forth were reflected by the nectar. This realization led to his attainment of the ultimate state and all excellent qualities. Saraha's life is an example of how a state of realization of the ultimate nature of mind and reality can lead to enlightenment. This state in Indian and Tibetan Buddhism is known as Mahamudra. Thanks to your overwhelming requests, we have created a new YouTube channel called Asangvani, dedicated to the calming chants and mantras from our videos. The link to the channel is in the description. An old song from the Tibetan teacher Marpa Lotsawa, who was the founder of the Kagyu lineage and introduced the Vajrayana teachings from India to Tibet, defines Mahamudra as the meaning of which is free from all elaboration. In this state, there are no objects to bring into the mind. In Sanskrit, the term Mahamudra means the great symbol. Its Tibetan equivalent is Chagya Chenpo, which means great seal or great gesture. This idea of a great symbol or a great seal relates to the inherent nature of Mahamudra. It is akin to a seal stamped on all phenomena, attesting to their validity or reality. Consequently, Mahamudra testifies to the real or ultimate nature of all phenomena. According to Buddhist masters, Mahamudra is one of the most advanced and important teachings transmitted from the Buddha. These teachings have been passed down through various lineages and generations to the present day. It is said that all these yogis and disciples who propagated it attained enlightenment in one lifetime through the practice of Mahamudra. And as their lives demonstrate, they were not born as enlightened beings beforehand. If we look at Shakyamuni Buddha's history, we'll see that first he had a rich samsara. He had a kingdom. More than the entire wealth of a big city belonged to him. And then, at a certain point, he threw off his dualistic robes and disappeared into nothingness. It was the same for Milarepa, same for Tilopa, Naropa, and Tsongkhapa. This means that Mahamudra is an experience of realization that we can achieve on our own, although it requires practice, knowledge, and perseverance. One of the most important aspects is the practice of sitting meditation. Meditation allows us to rest in our natural state of being, which means that emotions are no longer seen as obstacles or highlights. It also helps us achieve the pure, clear, and natural state that exists beyond the process of thinking. This state is Mahamudra. The truth of Mahamudra lies in the perfection that allows us to see the mind's own nature directly, without obscurations. The Buddha Dharma, or teaching of the Buddhas, or teaching of the awakening, shows us that suffering and negative conditions originate within ourselves, and that within us is a powerful potential to overcome this suffering and to actualize a life of compassion, transcendent vision, and beneficial activity. This quality that each one of us possesses is inherently related to the Buddha nature, which is calm and clear and cannot be stained, no matter what happens. As the Tibetan master Maitrapa explained, Mahamudra is non-dual awareness that transcends intellect. It is non-conceptual, lucid, like all-pervading space. Though manifesting boundless compassion, it is devoid of self-nature. It is like the reflection of the moon on the lake's surface. It is lucid and undefinable, without center or circumference, unstained, undefiled, and free from fear and desire. Like the dream of a mute, it is inexpressible. For the Tibetan Kagyu school, Mahamudra is considered the culmination and fulfillment of all practices, the enlightenment of all the Buddhas. Although some unusual students have presented spiritual faculties, enabling them to be directly introduced to this basic nature, the majority of people must be led gradually through training in meditation, study, and a disciplined lifestyle. These principles must be taught and adopted in accordance with the three vehicles or yanas. In Tibetan Buddhism, the three vehicles represent the progression of the spiritual path. They are not successive stages, but rather concentric circles that proceed simultaneously. In other words, they are approached as a unity. The three vehicles are known as Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. The Theravada tradition or foundational vehicle focuses on discipline and includes abandoning preoccupations and behaviors that are fruitless, both internally in our attitudes and externally through our lifestyle. It focuses on the stabilization of the mind with the purpose of facilitating the first stage of awakening. It also contains the foundational and basic teachings of the Buddhist tradition, such as the Four Noble Truths and the principles of impermanence and interdependence. It is primarily motivated by a desire to free ourselves from the suffering of samsara. The great vehicle or Mahayana tradition aims to attain Buddhahood. Its main motivation is to lead all sentient beings towards enlightenment. It incorporates the practice of bodhisattva, which means working energetically for the benefit of others and making compassion and concern for others' welfare the basic motivation of life. It also implies the cultivation of bodhicitta, a wish to bring to all beings the state of Buddhahood. The Mahayana tradition teaches that every person or sentient being can become a Buddha, with the only obstacle being our own failure to improve our actions and state of mind. The Vajrayana tradition, also known as the indestructible vehicle or diamond vehicle, includes tantric teachings of Buddhism. It embodies practices such as meditation and mantras aimed at achieving enlightenment within a single lifetime. Vajrayana considers attaining Buddhahood as not only beneficial for oneself but also for others, since it provides us with the best qualities to help all sentient beings. It is important to note that the three vehicles also represent traditions within Tibetan Buddhism that provide practitioners with different methods, concepts, and practices to achieve enlightenment. A possible reason for that development could be the fact that the Buddha taught for decades, and given the amount of teachings and knowledge available, it was difficult to find a unanimous interpretation. Buddhist masters explain that the purpose of transmitting and teaching this spiritual path is to awaken something innate in the student rather than introducing external knowledge. In other words, the capacities to attain Buddhahood already exist within us. We just need to learn how to develop them. When we consider the path of the three yanas, we assume it will help us realize Mahamudra. But what if I tell you that Mahamudra is something you cannot achieve, at least not in the common sense of the word? Let's explain this through a story. Once, Tilopa advised his disciple to go off to an isolated retreat and avoid any meditation. Now, this may seem a little unusual for a meditation retreat. He explains, however, that when you go to meditate, you normally take up something to meditate on. Something, that thing, and therefore that meditation is necessarily artificial. The practice of Mahamudra is not like that at all. It is not taking up a thing called Mahamudra and meditating on it. Ultimately, Mahamudra practice is meditation directly on reality itself. This means that focusing on reality itself implies the recognition of the absence of inherent existence in all phenomena. Therefore, attaining Mahamudra is actually attaining non-attainment. Mahamudra is not something to be obtained or kept, like obtaining a degree or keeping an object. If we get something, we are not getting Mahamudra. Consequently, our focus should be not on obtaining something, but in transcending, like Saraha at the beginning of our video did. This indicates that the true nature of reality, its ultimate meaning, transcends the illusion of the phenomenal world. Things as they appear are illusory manifestations of something beyond, hidden until we learn to perceive it directly. In other words, the true nature of reality is non-dual, and this permeates all things, organic, inorganic, permanent, impermanent, as well as all beings. Every existing energy is born within non-duality, functions within non-duality, and finally disappears into the nature of non-duality. The source of our endless suffering, as Lama Thubten Yeshe explains, lies in the fact that our mind becomes trapped in false discrimination, which is synonymous with becoming entangled in dualistic conceptions. A dualistic mind is contradictory, as it insaturates an internal dialogue that disturbs our peace. The first step is to recognize that confusion is the consequence of a mind that is altered by a dualistic view of reality. As we said at the beginning, suffering and negative conditions originate within ourselves, and that within us is a powerful potential to overcome this suffering. Deepening our understanding of Mahamudra also means realizing that the way things present themselves to us is merely a projection of our mind. However, it is important to note that this idea does not promote the nihilistic belief that nothing exists. Rather, it suggests that the crucial question is not whether something exists or not, but how we perceive it. What truly matters is seeking the correct view of reality. This becomes very clear in another example given by Lama Thubten Yeshe. When we relate to people, whether they are friends, family, or co-workers, our dualistic mind tends to impose an attractive or repellent mask on them. We categorize, or rather discriminate among them using terms like good, bad, attractive, unattractive, and so on. Consequently, reactions of desire or aversion shape our attitudes and behavior towards these individuals. These preconceived attitudes hinder genuine communication with them, and even more so, prevent us from connecting with the profound wisdom of an enlightened being. We do the exact thing to ourselves. We hold on to a dualistic self, one that is self-existent, independent, and separated from others. As the great Mahayana scholar Dharmakirti points out, this primordial belief in a separate me creates the concept of other. From this tremendous gap comes the evolution of all the samsara, the cycle of existence. In directing our mind along the path of Buddha Dharma, we come to understand that non-duality is, indeed, the true nature of reality. Realizing Mahamudra means realizing non-duality. It implies dispelling our misconceptions and overcoming ego. As we have seen, Mahamudra meditation transcends all concepts, ideas, doctrines, and philosophies. There are no concepts of God or Buddha within it. We must move beyond names, forms, self-images, and even compassion. This is the only path to experience the universal, infinite truth. In other words, Mahamudra is purely experiential, devoid of dimensions, cause and effect, or inherent nature. Maybe this short story can help us better understand this. When Shakyamuni Buddha discovered enlightenment, he was silent for several weeks. He felt it was not possible to express the deep, universal Mahamudra experience to others. Such profound things cannot be explained to anyone who hasn't reached that stage. As Buddhist masters teach, any human being who has not yet discovered the universal truth of Mahamudra is therefore in constant suffering. This implies being reborn as many times as necessary into the cycle of existence, into samsara. So, let's meditate on Mahamudra. As the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become wholly ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being, common to us all and to all living things. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the suffering that is going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth."